Now, it's Boomer Life, lifestyle discussion designed to make your life more engaging, meaningful, and complete. Celebrating the baby boomer generation, this is Boomer Life on CIL 650.
Music about the mind on Boomer Life. This would suggest perhaps a visit from the team from Neurokinetics. Why? It's exactly what has happened. And welcome to the program. Sterling Fox joined in studio by Dr. Philippe Silvestre, the founder and president of Neurokinetics Clinic in Vancouver. Good to see you again.
It's wonderful to be here.
And also joining us in studio, clinic manager Sonia Dale. Hello, welcome back.
Hello.
And J.C. Gordon is with us from Neurokinetics. J.C. is Director of Liaison and Logistics. Welcome back, sir.
Pleasure, Sterling.
Good to have you with us. Today on the program, we're going to talk, it's about the mind, it's about the brain, and brain optimization is a familiar and favorite phrase at Neurokinetics Clinic in Vancouver. But on the program today, we want to focus, and we have a visit from a former patient lined up on the agenda as well, but we want to focus on PTSD. So, Dr. Silvestre, by way of beginning a reasonable discussion of PTSD, please tell us what PTSD is. Really, we all think we know it is, but please tell us.
Yeah. PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress syndrome. And it is too often banalized into a psychological condition, which is actually inappropriate and inadequate, considering the severity of these conditions and the lack of medical and therapeutic resources that are able to bring someone who is afflicted by such a syndrome back to normal lifestyle and performance.
So post-traumatic stress disorder. So the traumatic event has occurred in a person's life, and post that traumatic event, the person is so upset by what happened, life just isn't the same anymore.
Well, I wouldn't even say it's a matter of being upset. It is a matter of getting overwhelmed from a brain standpoint, and the brain will become dysfunctional.
Right. We used to, and I think, JC, we first sort of came to know the term post-traumatic stress disorder in the 80s when our soldiers were returning home from war zones. And we discovered that this phenomenon amongst serving military combatants was real, and the consequences were profound, weren't they?
They really were, and it just didn't begin in the 1980s when the veterans came back from the war. It's been going on since the beginning of time, that post-traumatic stress is from stress, and stress happens in a number of ways for every different individual.
Dr. Philippe, there are a lot of people who listen to Boomer Life here on CIL who are boomers and who remember, as JC was just alluding to, previous conflicts, the Korean War, the Second World War. There were no medical terms attached to the psychological damage that was inflicted on those soldiers and sailors and airmen. When they came home, they were said to have shell shock.
Yes.
And various other, we gave descriptions for what was going on, but it really, in all of those events, in all of those occasions, it really was PTSD, wasn't it?
Well, PTSD is a medical definition of this particular condition, which is basically characterized by different grades of incapacitation,
right,
from a physical standpoint, from an emotional standpoint, from a cognitive standpoint, from an intellectual standpoint, and ended up in incapacitating those. I don't want to say patient, but incapacitating those individuals from an executive standpoint as well. So one of the severe grades of such a condition leads to freeze in front of something to do in a particular circumstances, a particular action.
Right. And Sonia, a lot of the people who are neurokinetics patients these days who are there for PTSD, they're not retired military people or former soldiers. A lot of them our first responders. We're finding out more and more in 2015 about firefighters and paramedics and police officers, people who are the first on the scene of horrific events sometimes, and the damage, psychological damage caused is profound again, isn't it?
It is. It's not just caused. I mean, it's not something, an effect that in someone's life that it is experiencing. PTSD. It's also could be by witnessing it, like you're saying, the first responders, police officers, firefighters, war veterans. We have they experience a lot of things or witness a lot of things that maybe we forget. We don't realize the stuff that they see day to day. Another thing could be, in schools. It could be teens, for example. The stress level in schools, there's the cool groups and then there's the not so cool groups, in schools. So it could be the stress of fitting in. It could be bullying. It could be, assaults. Many other things that are related. It's not just coming from being in first responders, for example.
Circumstances such as abuse or dysfunctional families would lead to this type of extreme conditions, and usually they are overlooked and denied.
What I wanted to ask you about, though, Doc, more than anything else, is the fact that we're hearing now from the wives, widows of former members of the RCMP, for example, who are asking the government of Canada to conduct a study because their husbands suffered PTSD and ended up killing themselves. They committed suicide. What is it about PTSD that causes such a dramatic event in a person's life where they're prepared to take their own lives?
Disconnect would be the capturing phenomenon, the core phenomenon. When you get insulated, isolated, disconnected with a reality toward which we are physiologically built up and made up to connect with, it's like you suppress all the five senses at once. In someone, you find yourself in a blank zone, totally without being capable to hear any noise, any visual meaning of what is around you. The touch is gone, this type of thing. You find yourself in a place which is unbearable.
Right.
And the only way out is to shorten that.
It's a phenomenon that is so profound, JC. And of course, and I was just talking about the widows of former Mounties, and there are dozens of them involved in this project. This is something, this PTSD business is not just about the individual who has suffered the traumatic event. It's about everyone in that individual's life, too, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely true. And I know even professional athletes have had post-traumatic stress, and even here in Vancouver, we had a number of years ago, we had an NHL hockey player who unfortunately took his own life, and I remember that summer there were actually 3 NHL hockey players that took their life who suffered from PTSD. It's a phenomenon that is out there and more rampant than we can even begin to believe.
Right. So, Sonia, when people call you, Sonia is the clinic manager and very frequently the first line of contact that we have with Neurokinetics. And so when someone sends you an email or picks up the phone and calls and indicates that there's a likely PTSD scenario going on, do you encourage that person when they come into Neurokinetics to bring family members with them?
Yes, most definitely.
Okay.
Generally with any condition, we do ask for, a loved one or family member or friend to come along with them, because they can also help recall a certain situation if they do forget, meaning the person that's coming in to get the care. If they don't remember or if they don't, recalling the certain situation may be very difficult, very emotional, and it's also a fear. It's also the danger of going back to that scenario and repeating it, whereas when they bring in a loved one or a partner or a friend, they can help with that situation and help us have a better understanding of how severe the condition is.
And I would imagine that on more than a few occasions, friends or particularly close family members who brought in the person with the post-traumatic stress disorder have learned enough about what's gone on in their person's life that they too benefit from the experience simply by getting to understand what's going on.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, I think it's also helping educate the family members and the friends and understanding that they're isolating themselves from the world for a reason.
Yeah.
If going out to, for example, getting into the car is traumatic for them, there's a reason behind it. If, for example, going into a party with other people is traumatizing to them, there's a reason behind that. We want them to realize it's not just, get over it now, it's been 10 years or 5 years. No, there's a reason. It takes time. We just are helping them, also educate them at the same time.
Well, and get over it, Philippe. You're an ex-military guy. You were a surgeon in the French Air Force. You know the military mindset, and there's a culture that says you're tough. You can handle this. You don't need any help. Tough guys don't need help. Tough guys just get through it. They suck it up and they get through it. And so and the police, the same kind of close ranks, tough guys get it done kind of mentality that makes it even more difficult for individuals to reach out for help, doesn't it? It's not a good thing, that culture.
There is nothing more unrealistic than thinking like this.
Right. And yet it's widespread not just it's through the military culture the world over, isn't it?
I think it is a healthy side of things as a protective device psychologically to go through repetitively through difficult and challenging situations, sometimes life-threatening. But beside that, there's a reality which is the brain is or can be overwhelmed out of any act of will, and that will come in a snap under any circumstances. There is no way one can predict an occurrence of a PTSD. It does happen or it does not happen. It is unpredictable. And through my career, I have begun to understand the history of what is building up a condition towards creating a PTSD condition.
Right.
And the base is physiological. It is organic. It functionally organic.
Right.
Not talking about damage, but functionally dysfunctional, in short, compared to a purely psychological interpretation, which is totally unrealistic.
Interesting stuff. Our guests are from Neurokinetics Clinic here in Vancouver. Our guests are Dr. Philippe Souvestre, Clinic Manager Sonia Dale. J.C. Gordon is with us too. He's a Director of Liaison and Logistics. And I'm going to take a break now, but when we come back, we're going to carry on our conversation about post-traumatic stress disorder and what the people at Neurokinetics do for patients who come to them with PTSD. And we're also going to hear from a patient who has been through the process. And we'll pick up that conversation in just a couple of minutes right here.
Canada's only weekly radio show dedicated to the baby boomer lifestyle. This is Boomer Life on CIL 650.